What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel Hand Waving. Your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 is here again with a brand new Naruto fanfic that's going to change everything. Today's fanfic is titled, What If Dragon Emperor Naruto Ruled DxD with Rias, Anko, Hinata and Ino? Part 2. Let's start this fanfic. Meanwhile, Naruto was gripping his seat as tight as he could as he was doing his best not to run away. He whispered out in fear, "Don't go in there. Don't go in there." No, he bit down on his shirt to muffle his scream. The three shinobi were at the moment in a movie theater watching a horror movie. But not just any horror movie. It was one that had ghosts in it, and Naruto had a major fear of ghosts. Ino was doing much better, but she had gripped onto Naruto's sleeve as she had a mild fear of the paranormal. Hinata, however, was enjoying the movie as she had no fear of it. She munched on a cinnamon bun. It was one of the reasons that they went to this theater. They sold cinnamon buns at the snack bar. Naruto muffled out a silent question, "Why are we even watching this?" Hinata, who was sitting on his right, looked at him with a smile, "Because we felt you needed to relax and there were a few movies that we wanted to watch." "Yeah. But why this one?" Naruto went white as he heard someone in the movie steam. Kurama couldn't help but scoff. Coward. He went back to watching the movie through Naruto, enjoying it very much. Elsewhere, with Issei. Issei was walking with Yuma as they began their date. They had breakfast at a diner before since it was early, and now they went off to their next destination. Issei put his hand in his pocket and felt the slip of paper that he got from a bat cosplayer on the street. He thought that the flyer was odd since it didn't really have much on it, but he kept it for no particular reason. He looked to his right at his girlfriend and couldn't help but smile. His smile grew when he felt her grab his hand and began to take him where she wanted to go. She is amazing. Later, Naruto, Ino, and Hinata walked out of the theater as they had finished the last movie. Naruto stretched his arms as he didn't usually sit in one spot for so long. Sure, he spent a lot of time on the seal, but he would usually walk around it so he didn't feel stiff. But this was a movie marathon. Finally out of there. I didn't think we would be spending all day in there. There were so many movies and most of them were good. I liked the last one. Hinata finished a small cinnamon bun that she bought when they decided to head home. If we ever get the chance, we should find a picture of the moth one and send it to Shino back home. Ino shivered a bit as she thought about what Shino was most likely to do, make more. But shook it off before she spoke. I'm sure that if we tell him that we found one in this world, he would want us to send him a couple so he could breed them, or he would want to come over here so he could see it in person. She then looked to Naruto. And why am I not surprised that you like the one with big monsters on it? A reference to Fox in the Leaf. Early on in Ino's life, she fell into a beehive, so she has a fear of swarms. Hinata smiled as she was wiping her hands with a handkerchief, maybe because he has had to deal with one all his life. Kurama heard this and scoffed at this as he put in his 2 cents, even if Naruto was the only one that could hear it. Che. All those monsters are nothing but lightweights. None of them could hold a candle to us Biju. Though I did think that 3-headed one was interesting. Naruto's sweat dropped at this. Really? You like the one that isn't called the king of the monsters? And you seriously need to stop comparing everything big to yourself. We get it, you're huge and powerful. Stop bragging, 2-chan. Ino and Hinata saw the far-off look that Naruto had, and they knew that it meant that he was talking to Kurama. Hinata let her curiosity grab her as she asked, "What did Kurama say?" Naruto looked to his girls before saying, "He is just bragging again, saying that the king of the monsters wasn't as big or as powerful as he or the other Biju are. Honestly, I think he just likes to think of himself as unstoppable and is inflating his ego." Hey. The girls giggled at this as they began to make their way home. Ino looked to Hinata as she asked, "Which one was your favorite?" Hinata thought about the movies that they had watched and answered, "I like the one with the dragons. I really like how they gave the perception of each side from the dragons and their new riders." Ino nodded before she gave her answer. I like the one with the father and son finding their way through the hardships life gave them. Sure, it made me cry, but to be able to get the job that brought them out of their tough times. She then looked to Naruto, what about you? Naruto thought about the movies they saw and spoke, well, apart from the last one, I like the one with the showman. A band of misfits finding a home like that. It was a good movie, not to mention the songs they had. The girls nodded as they continued on their way home, discussing the movies they had watched. Naruto then suddenly stopped walking and turned his head to his right. Ino and Hinata noticed this and grew concerned. What is it? Naruto narrowed his eyes at the direction he was looking. One of the negative emotions I had been feeling just became malicious. He looked to the girls with a dead serious expression. Whoever it is about to do something bad. The girls understood what he was implying and grew serious as well. Naruto led the girls into an alley so they wouldn't be seen before all three vanished, with Naruto leading them to where he felt it was coming from. The three shinobi moved fast towards the feeling, and Naruto was glad that they had the concealment seals on them. Although he wished he had made them stronger so they could go full speed, but he never got around to doing that since they never needed it. If it weren't for the fact that they needed to stay hidden, they would have arrived already. They made it to the park with Naruto barely catching a glimpse of someone with black wings flying away from the area. He wanted to follow, but a smell caught his scent. Blood. Looking ahead of him, he saw that someone was laying in a pool of blood next to the fountain. Shit. He led the two girls to the body and to his shack. He saw that it was Issei. He turned to Hinata and Ino. Can you save him? Both girls moved to each of the dying boy's sides, with Ino using medical jutsu to scan and attempt to heal the hole in his torso, as Hinata did the same while also using her Byakugan. Naruto looked towards where he saw the person fly off and grit his teeth. Looking down, he saw a few black feathers. He bent down and picked it up before taking a whiff of it. I've got your scent now, whoever you are. He turned to look at the girls and could feel their disappointment and sadness at what was happening. They looked at him and he didn't need them to say anything to know what they wanted to say. Damn it. The three shinobi were then surprised to see Issei lifting his hand and staring at it. Naruto moved forward to be in Issei's sight. Issei. Can you hear me? However, the brunette did not say anything to the blonde. Ino looked to Naruto. I don't think he even realizes we are here. Naruto sighed in defeat as he hated the fact that he couldn't save Issei. However, he did crack a small smile as he felt a bit of lust coming from the pervert. Even with his dying breath, he thinks of. Meanwhile, Rias felt like her red hair was going to become pink soon with all the stress she had in her body. Not only has she not been able to find Naruto, Ino, or Hinata, but her peerage had no luck finding Issei. For most of the day, they had stuck with trying to find both parties, but after a certain point, she had abandoned her want to find Naruto and his group and instead went searching for Issei. However, they had not found him either. Where is that devil's luck when you need it? It was then she felt that she was being called by one of the flyers that her familiar was sent to hand out. From what she could tell, it was an extremely desperate call. Due to how strong the desire felt, she felt that she could handle it quickly and go off to find the fallen angel along with Issei. She moved over to a secluded area before she activated her teleportation circle and homed in on the flyer. Back with Naruto. As the three sat there with the dying boy so he would not die alone, they were surprised to see something in his pocket burst into red light, causing them to cover their eyes. They saw that as it died down, a red circle appeared a few feet away from them and it caused them to be on alert. Naruto did not want to deal with whatever it could be, and being cautious about it, he sent out an order, hide. The three then disappeared just as a figure came from the circle. Rias turned around and saw who it was that called her, and immediately her mood dropped. One miscalculation was all it took to allow this to happen. Although she knew that this was a possibility, it did not mean she liked it. She knelt down to him and with a sad smile she brought her hand up. Not how I wanted you to join my peerage, as I wanted to avoid doing this as you die, but I suppose there is no other way. She summoned her devil wings, summoned her pieces, and began the resurrection process. Hidden in the trees of the park, The three shinobi watched as the redhead girl did something to the body. Ino and Hinata were confused about what was happening, but they turned their heads when they heard something break. Naruto broke off a chunk of the tree as he glared at the redhead. Both grew concerned before looking at the bands he had on his wrist and could see them light up, trying to conceal his chakra. Ino was the first to ask, "Naruto, what's wrong?" Naruto took a deep breath, but his eyes showed that he was still outraged as his pupils were still slits. "I don't know what she is doing, but from what she just said, she expected someone to attack and kill him." Hinata gasped as she asked, "Are you sure?" Naruto shook his head, not 100%, but based on the fact that she is feeling regret along with her words, she knew this would happen. He stood up from his crouched position on the branch as he spoke. "Let's head back home. We are going to have to be wary of Rias Grimori." Hinata and Ino nodded as the three vanished from the park, not seeing the full ceremony Rias was doing. The encounter. Naruto, Ino, and Hinata made it home with Naruto stomping into the living room and plopping down on the couch. He glared at the wall as he tried to calm down. "Naruto." Naruto shifted his eyes up so that his gaze fell on Hinata's face, who stood in front of him. He couldn't keep his anger as he saw the concerned look Hinata had. He sighed as he leaned back on the couch. "I'm fine, Hinata. Ino moved behind Naruto and wrapped her arms around his neck. "You don't like what happened?" He leaned back as he nodded. "It's not just that. Issei may be a pervert, but he wasn't a bad guy, at least not as bad as his friends." Rias seemed to be remorseful about this, but it seemed like she wasn't that broken about it. It was almost like a part of her was okay with it. Hinata sat next to him as she thought of something. "So what are we going to do about Rias?" "We need to keep tabs on her. She isn't human, that much is certain, but she wanted something from Issei and his corpse must still have it." Ino leaned down so her head was next to his. "Why didn't you leave a clone with her and tail her as you did for all those other people?" Naruto's glare returned. "Because if I left a clone there, it would have attacked her straight away. We need intel, and at that moment I was not in the mood for being patient." The girls nodded as they were in a similar mindset, albeit much more toned down. Naruto got up and sighed as the day started out so well, until that event. "Come on girls, let's get some sleep. Tomorrow I will leave a clone to tail her and see what her plan is." The girls followed Naruto to the bedroom, ready to put this day behind them. Next day, Monday. They couldn't understand it. They were there, they saw the body, they knew he had lost all signs of life, but there he was, walking through the halls as if nothing was wrong. The three were outside with Naruto just staring at Issei through an open window as the brunette was talking animatedly with his friends. Wah. Ino and Hinata nodded as they agreed with his lack of speech. Ino looked to Hinata and asked, "We both came to the same conclusion when we checked him, right?" Hinata nodded. "Yes. All signs of life were fading so fast that there was no way we could save him." Naruto sniffed the air to see if there was any scent of death, but no, there was no sign of such a scent. But there was a slight change to his scent. It was small and almost unnoticeable, but it was there, he just wasn't sure what it was. It was then that he focused on his hearing. He got a bunch of random chatter until he caught Issei's voice and focused on what he was saying. "What do you mean that you don't remember about Yuma?" Matsuda shrugged his shoulders as he said, "I'm telling you, you never told us about this girl." Motohama adjusted his glasses. "Perhaps you imagined this girl to the point that you believed she was real." Issei felt angered at this as he rummaged through his pockets. "Are you kidding me? I know I told you about her. I even showed you a picture of her, here." He pulled out his phone and began to go through it, only to find that Yuma's contact info and pictures of her were no longer saved on his phone. What the hell? It's gone. He thought about this as it just didn't make any sense to him. His eyes then suddenly went up to the top of the stairs to see the red-haired beauty queen, Rias Grimori, looking down at them. Rias looked at Issei and could see that he was doing far better. She began to walk down the stairs while keeping her stoic visage, but as she passed the three she shifted her gaze to Issei and smiled. "Good, it looks like he has gone back to a normal life. I will have to meet up with him soon to tell him about what he has become. She continued walking down the stairs and off towards the clubroom. Naruto thought about the little interaction that just happened between Rias and Issei. Although it looked like Rias was acting her usual nonchalant persona, the regret he felt spike from her told him that she might have done something that she didn't want to do. Though this did help him in thinking that she had done something to bring him back from the dead. Hearing Issei's friend talk about going to his house to watch some before screaming out, "Banzai de Arrow," he lowered his hearing while sweat dropping about the pure perversion the perverts had. Who the hell would scream that out in school? He looked to the two next to him and was about to say something until Whiskers. Naruto looked to the side to see another rampaging mob led by Aika that was after his Whiskers. He whispered out, "Shit. Hinata, Ino, meet me behind the school to start our mission." And with that, he dropped his glare and began running with the mob of girls chasing after him. Hinata puffed out her cheeks in jealousy before Ino placed a hand on her shoulder. She huffed a bit before staring at the direction they went. They never give up, do they? Ino giggled at this before shaking her head. Even when we told them that he was off limits, they still tried their best to get to him. Even when we told some of them that he was dating us, most of the girls got even more enthusiastic in trying to catch him, especially Aika. Hinata looked at Ino with a look of defeat, and the ones who were told about that didn't tell anyone else. It was like they didn't want to add to their competition. Even the ones that thought he was a pervert like Issei and his friends soon went back to chasing him after they confronted him and he apparently bashfully spoke to them. Aika on the other hand was not deterred when she found out. She just grew more determined. Ino shrugged as she and Hinata began walking towards the building. You should know as well as I that when a girl wants something, she will do her best to get it. And Naruto has this charm to him that I doubt he even knows he has. I mean, look at us. Hinata sighed again. We didn't really try to resist that hard. We just decided and it all worked out. If you think about it, we did go through a lot for us to finally admit it though. I still remember how Naruto lost an arm trying to get to us before we were killed. Hinata looked around to see if anyone heard them as she pressed her hand over Ino's. Ino, you know we can't talk about it here. Ino huffed through her nose as she didn't like the idea that they had to hide here, but she knew the importance of staying out of sight. Now more than ever. She nodded before they continued towards class so they could just wait for it to start. Orc. Rias walked into the clubroom as she sighed tiredly. It's not like you to be this tired so early in the day. What's on your mind? Rias looked up to see Sona leaning next to the window smiling at her. Rias shook her head as she moved to the couch and sat down. To be honest, Sona, I don't know. I got Issei into my peerage. I saved his life and it seems he easily got back into his normal routine, but why do I feel like I did something terrible? Sona's smile dropped as she figured that Rias might feel like this. Rias, peerage was made up of those who had troubled pasts and were brought in under specific circumstances. Issei, however, was brought in quite differently. You might be feeling guilty for using him as bait and it backfired. Rias steepled her fingers as she leaned on them. I brought him back though. I fixed my mistake, but it still feels like something is going to happen. Maybe you're overthinking this. Maybe. Rias got up and began to undress so she could take a shower in the clubroom built-in bathroom. Sona looked out the window as she asked, by the way, about Uzumaki. Rias paused her unbuckling her bra for a second before continuing. Once I test Issei for his capabilities, I will think about Naruto. Sona nodded. When will you inform Hyudo? Rias was now fully as she walked towards the shower room. Tomorrow after school. Everyone will be in attendance for it and we can add him to the club during that time as well. Sona nodded as she pushed herself off the windowsill and made her way out of the room. I wish you luck with Issei, though I still haven't given up my opinion on Uzumaki. Rias turned the shower on. I know. I most likely will allow you to have him as we found nothing about him in the years he has been here. A part of that rumor that he is dating both Ino and Hinata. Sona paused as she smiled good-naturedly. It's hard to believe based on his nature. He doesn't seem the type to try and gain a harem like Issei and his friends. But then again, this just adds to the mystery of Naruto Uzumaki. She walked out of the room and off to the student council's office. Later that night, can I at least rearrange their minds so they won't be perverts anymore? No, Ino. You can't kill them, make them brain dead, cut off their balls, make them impotent, or rearrange their minds. Ino huffed as she laid back on the roof the three were using to keep an eye on Issei. So far, it was turning out to be a waste of time since the first thing the guy did was head over to his friend's place and started watching. And frankly, she was bored. This is a complete waste of time. All they have been doing is watching that weird cosplay smut. How can they even find that stuff entertaining? Hinata shook her head as she sat with her knees up. Everyone has their preferences, Ino. Although Hinata looked as calm and content as ever, she was also finding this stakeout to be quite tiresome. Naruto would have been bored if it weren't for the fact that he was blushing in embarrassment since he could hear the moans and sounds that came from the videos that the three perverts were watching. He may not be able to see it, but he sure as hell can hear it. Can't they watch something else? Humans have a weird way of entertaining themselves. To watch such things when they could be doing something more entertaining. Oh, you mean like going on a rampage and destroying a few mountains? Quote. Maybe 3 or 4. You know we can't do that. Kit, we haven't had any chance of fighting anything. And no, your training doesn't count. Seeing you beat yourself and helping your mates become stronger cannot be considered a fight. Sigh. Yeah, we got much stronger, but the three of us haven't been able to test out our full strength. He was brought out of his thoughts when he felt Ino tapping him on the shoulder. He looked at her to see her pointing at the house. He saw that Issei was leaving and heading towards his house. Finally, I was really getting tired of hearing all those ohs and ahs. Let's go. The three followed in the shadows as Issei dazedly walked home. This was something the three noticed and grew confused about. It wasn't until Issei turned around to look towards a mother and daughter a good distance away from him. How can I hear them all the way from here? The three were stunned to hear that Issei had heard the little girl complaining to her mother about some candy she wanted. They knew for a fact that the people here cannot hear that well. They could because they had the training to increase their hearing, and channeling a minute amount of chakra into their ears helps as well, but Issei was normal. Or at least he used to be. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he noticed the boy change direction and was heading towards the fountain where he died. He was unsure how good Issei's hearing became, but he gestured to his two companions to pull back a bit so there was a greater distance between them and him as he whispered out, "Think he remembers he died there." Ino thought about it as they moved, possibly. During the day it didn't seem like he had any idea of what happened. It might be a suppressed memory that he has subconsciously forgotten, but if he is going back to that fountain, he might have an inkling about it. Naruto and Hinata nodded as they followed from a distance. Fountain. Issei walked slowly towards the fountain he remembered from his date with Yuma. This was where we had our date. I know it was real. I remember her hand intertwined with mine. Her smile when we went out for ice cream. He clutched his shirt as he remembered how it felt to have someone by his side, someone that didn't look down on him or think he was nothing more than a pervert. It can't have been just a dream, could it? The three shinobi were hidden in the trees too far away for the girls to hear what Issei was saying to himself, but Naruto could. Naruto shook his head. I don't know exactly what happened, but looks like this girl really left an impression on him. Hinata looked at him as she asked, "What do you mean?" Naruto sighed. It almost sounds like he felt how I would feel when I'm with you too. Ino and Hinata now understood that the girl Issei was with meant a lot to him. Ino then gained an inquisitive look. Then there is more to this than we realize. This girl shows up out of nowhere, and then after Issei gets killed everyone forgets that he even said her name. The other two nodded with Hinata speaking up. It would seem that someone erased the memory of Yuma. But the question is, why were we not affected? Naruto thought about it for a second before he mentally asked, "Tu-chan, you got any idea?" Kurama opened one of his eyes since nothing of real interest was happening and he decided to take a nap. There was that small tickle that happened last night when all of us were asleep, but it was so small that it didn't even seem worth mentioning. Maybe that was a genjutsu that erased memories. You didn't say anything. Like I said, Kit. It was too small to even care about and it didn't even affect you three, so it wasn't worth mentioning. Naruto was brought out of his mental conversation when he felt one of the negative beings he felt throughout the city suddenly appear in the park and a weird sensation overtook him. He looked to the girls to see that they also felt it. He looked toward Issei to see that he wasn't alone anymore. Not good. Ino, Hinata, circle around him in case he tries to flee. I'm going to. He paused as he saw Issei make a leap that should not have been possible for him. Okay, now I know something is up. Girls go. Ino and Hinata disappeared from his sight as Naruto made his way closer. So you are running away. Issei panicked as every fiber of his being told him to run away from this trench coat wearing man. What the hell is going on? And he turned and ran. Naruto turned in the same direction of Issei as he followed from within the forest. Okay, he is slightly faster now. He then felt the malicious intent coming from the stranger, and the interesting thing was that it was coming from above Issei. Looking up, he saw the guy with black feathered wings and his mind immediately went back to the previous night. Issei ran away as fast as he could to get away from the random guy. What the hell is going on? Who was that guy and why do I feel like I shouldn't even be near him? He saw black feathers begin to fall from above him and he remembered that Yuma had the same kind of feathers. Looking up, he expected to see her, but instead, he saw the man looking down at him. He stopped in his tracks when the man landed in front of him. The man looked around to see if there were any other signs of devils nearby and was intrigued by the fact that there was no sign of anyone else, no master, no comrades, which means you are nothing more than a stray. He brought up his arm to the side and summoned a light spear, easy prey. Issei turned and ran in fear. If this is a dream, then someone, wake me up. In his haste, however, he tripped and fell to the ground. Turning his head, he saw the man throw the spear at him, aiming to kill him. Someone. Anyone. Help. He shut his eyes as the light from the projectile grew closer. After a few seconds, expecting to feel some sort of pain and not feeling anything, he thought to himself, was it a painless death or something? He could still see the light shine through his eyelids and took a chance at opening his eye only to see the tip of the spear an inch from him. He screamed in shock and stumbled back from it before looking down at his body to see that he wasn't hurt. He looked back to the spear and saw that someone had grabbed it. Following the arm that held the spear, he saw who it was, Naruto. Naruto sighed in relief that he caught the spear. That was close. Thankfully the spear was moving slow enough for me to catch it. Even at that close of a distance, it was almost at a slug's pace. Better not ever mention that to Ba-chan. He looked at the down boy and gave his foxy smile. Hey, you okay? Issei was dumbfounded. Wah. How? When? The man was confused as well. How did I not sense him nearby? Who are you? Naruto turned and glared at the man. Give your name first and then I will give you mine. Damn, that sounded cool. I should watch more movies. The man smiled as he took off his hat and gave a gentleman's bow. I am DxD. Naruto gave a smile as he answered back. I am Naruto Uzumaki. Now, why don't you tell me why the hell you are trying to kill this guy? DxD placed his hat back on his head. A stray devil does not deserve to live if it has abandoned its master. This is the common rule that we all follow. Hearing what DxD said caused something to snap in Naruto. Devil. Master. He gripped the spear so hard that it shattered in his hand. He glared hard at DxD before he said, Ino. Hinata. Before DxD could react, he felt something impact hard into several pressure points in his body and several slashes on joints of his body. He fell hard onto the ground and looked up to see two females, wearing the same uniform, glaring down at him with both holding their hands up with 2 fingers extended, although the brunette had her thumb pressed with her 2 fingers as well. How did I not sense any of you? Naruto moved closer to stand between the girls as he glared at the man. You should work on your sense better, but I doubt you will have the chance. He brought his fist up, ready to knock the guy out until a bright red light began to shine behind all of them. The shinobi turned around to see what was going on until they saw three figures appear from a red circle on the ground. Danasik saw who it was and knew now that he was out of his league. Not only were these three unknowns here and were the ones that crippled him, but the red-haired girl that just appeared told him that the heir of the Grimoire family had arrived. I must flee. Luckier him, his wings were still functional and he used them to push himself off the ground and into the air. The three shinobi turned back in time to see Danasik fly into the air and disappear from sight. Damn it! Danasik's voice then rang through the air, you almost had me and I commend you for that. I hope we never meet again. Naruto saw a feather fall from the air and swiped it into his hand. Taking a sniff, he knew two things now. 1. This was not the same winged figure that killed Issei before, and 2. He had the man's scent and would not let him get away next time. Rias knelt down to Issei and looked him over to see if he was okay. Are you alright, Issei? Issei was confused about what was going on. First, a weird man pops up out of nowhere to kill him. Next, his classmate and one of the most popular guys in his school shows up and saves him. Then two of the beauty queens appear and take the man down. And now the third and fourth beauty queens show up with the mascot of the school with the red-haired one looking him over, making sure he was okay. What's going on here? Rias sighed in relief that he was fine. She did not expect another attack from the fallen angels so soon, but she was glad that it didn't turn out to be another death. I promise I will explain everything to you. Why not do it now? Rias, Akeno, Kaneko, and Issei looked up to see the angry look of Hinata and Ino and the dark look coming from Naruto. Naruto took a step forward and spoke with anger clear in his voice, why not explain what the hell you are and what you did to him? Rias was a little taken aback by the attitude the blonde had. Not once has anyone seen anger in the blonde's face, and some even thought that he didn't even know how to be angry, but the look he had now showed fury he was holding. She took a breath as she stood up and stared Naruto in the eye, so I was right that there was something about you. Do not try and get out of explaining. He paused for a second as something came to him. So you can teleport. Rias was stunned to hear such a declaration. Yes, she and the other two teleported here, but to come straight to such a conclusion was of interest to her. How did you know that? Naruto did not grace her with an answer. He wasn't going to tell her that he had a clone watching her as she went about her business in the clubroom she uses and dispelled when the three disappeared in the same red light. He shifted his gaze to the other two that arrived with Rias and decided to push deeper into his advantage. So it was you that had Kaneko tailing me all this time. He saw the shock on Rias and Akeno and the slight widening of Kaneko's eyes. He looked at the petite girl and said, "You're not as stealthy as you think." Looking back at Rias, he spoke with authority, "Now answer my question." Rias knew that she had to explain everything not only to Issei but now to the three unknowns that had plagued both her and Sona's radar for so long. I will explain everything to you and Issei tomorrow after school. It is late and I wish to discuss some things with you as well. Naruto did not like the answer, but sensing no lie, he took a few steps back till he stood with Ino and Hinata. You better explain everything since I hate liars. And with that, the three shunshined away. Everyone that remained there were stunned at the sudden disappearance of the three, and they looked around to see if they could get a glimpse of where they might have gone. Kaneko was the most startled as she said, "Chakra. They used chakra." Akeno and Rias looked at her in shock. So that time you said you sensed chakra and he was in the area meant that it did come from him. She then gained a question, how have they remained hidden for so long? Kaneko shook her head signifying that she had no idea. Rias could only sigh as things were becoming far more difficult. It turns out that her gut feeling was right when she thought that there was something about the three, but now it seems like it will take some extreme convincing if she wants to add them to her peerage. She looked down at Issei, who was still too stunned to say anything, and she brought her hand up for him to take. Issei, I know you are confused right now, but I promise to explain everything to you tomorrow. But right now, let's get you home. Issei took the hand and got to his feet, and they began to make their way towards his house. He was still so confused that it didn't even register in his head that he was being escorted by three beautiful girls. The meeting. Issei was sitting in his seat in class while looking out the window while his teacher was going over the lesson. He hadn't slept much last night. After Rias, Kaneko, and Akino escorted him back home, he was told that someone would be sent to get him at the end of class. Throughout the day, his mind was more focused on what had happened recently. I was attacked by winged people, Rias knowing about it, and then Naruto, Ino, and Hinata showing up out of nowhere to save me. What did I get myself into? Naruto, on the other hand, had his head on his desk sleeping comfortably while his teacher ignored the fact that he slept. One of the biggest mysteries that the teachers could never figure out was that despite Naruto sleeping through almost all his classes, he still got high marks on all tests and assignments. The only issue was, pay attention girls. All the female students could not help but find Naruto's sleeping face adorable to watch. He's so cute. He looks like a sleeping cat. I want to pet him. Ino and Hinata chose to ignore what was happening in the classroom despite Hinata twitching every now and then. They were writing in their notebook for the next time they sent messages to Konoha. They didn't need to pay attention to the lesson since they had already studied the material in the book they used, so they were here more for formalities than anything else. This was how the newcomers to the supernatural world spent their time. After class, Naruto opened his eyes as it was the end of class and he enjoyed his nap. He stretched out his arm over his head before he wiped the sleep out of his eyes. Nice nap. He ignored the fangirl squealing at his action as he had gotten used to it. It was then he remembered what he needed to do, so he got up from his seat, grabbed his bag, and went to join Ino and Hinata as they got up from their seats. The three were about to head out until another group squeal resounded at the classroom door. It's Kiba. What would he want in our class? Kiba Yudo smiled at the girls around him as he politely excused himself and made his way to the three shinobi. Ah, good, you're still here. I've been requested by Rias to bring you over so we may discuss some important matters. The three shinobi kept their usual appearance as normal students with small smiles. However, internally they were dead serious. That was until. I wonder who is on top and who is on the bottom between Kiba and Naruto. Ika popped up out of nowhere and decided to make things far more difficult. Naruto felt the need to hit his head on the wall, especially since he saw some of the girls begin to gain this dazed daydreaming look. He looked to Kiba and quickly said, "Let's go before rumors spread." Kiba nodded as he gave a slightly strained smile, though it went unnoticed by everyone. Indeed. The group left the classroom, leaving a group of daydreaming girls. They made their way towards another classroom to pick up Issei, and Naruto could tell that the girls that saw them walk as a group began to smile in a fangirl way. Seems that the rumor Ika no doubt will start hasn't made it far. Hopefully, we can get out of view from everyone before they all start imagining more. They stopped in front of another classroom as Kiba looked to his guests. Please wait here while I go retrieve Issei. Seeing the three nod, he made his way inside and ran into the same thing as before. A group of girls fawning for his affection. You're all looking lovely today. He made his way through the group with the girls making small comments about him gracing their presence. Issei heard the commotion and turned his head to see Kiba arrive. Oh great, Prince Charming is here. He decided that he should just ignore the guy as he waited for whoever was going to be sent here to retrieve him. Ah, there you are. Issei turned his head as he was surprised to hear Kiba talking to him. I've come here on the behest of Rias. Issei was now even more surprised that Kiba was the one that came to get him. Wait, you are the one that she sent. Kiba nodded. Indeed. Come, there is much that we need to get done. The girls began to all dread the fact that Issei was walking with Kiba out of the class. Kiba, don't, you'll catch pervert. You'll lose all your friends and become unpopular. A chuckle could be heard from behind the girls as they were all watching Kiba inside. The girls looked behind them to see the first prince of Kuo. Naruto was trying his best to hold in his laughter and how low the girls thought about Issei. It reminded him of Jiraiya and the stupid antics. Kya. Naruto opened his eyes to see the girls begin to look back and forth between, and they were all blushing. It was like they could not believe that the two princes of the school were standing in their presence, and in all actuality it was. Throughout the entire time that they were at the school, they never interacted with each other. Kiba because he had duties with his fellow devils, and Naruto usually did not interact much with anyone apart from the girls chasing him around. This could be one of the rare chances that the two were in close proximity for longer than a simple passing. The two princes are here. Oh Kami, please tell me I'm not hallucinated. Several of the girls fanned themselves as if they were heating up, and a couple of them fell back dramatically only to be caught by the others. Kiba walked out with Issei right behind him. Issei was surprised to see Naruto, Ino, and Hinata waiting for them. Wait, you guys are coming too? Naruto smiled as he nodded, of course. We all have some things we need to talk about. Kiba nodded and gestured for them to follow. As they walked towards their destination, Naruto looked Issei over and could not see anything wrong with him. Hey Issei, you feeling alright? Issei was startled at the sudden conversation, but once the question registered he nodded, yeah. I'm just a little confused with what is going on. The three shinobi nodded with Ino saying, don't worry. We should be getting answers soon, she said as she turned her gaze at the back of Kiba's head. Kiba could not help but think that he was being threatened by that statement, but he showed no visible reaction to it. They made it to the orc, and inside the room were Rias, Akino, Kaneko, Sona, and Tsubaki. The group all paused what they were doing and turned their gaze to the new arrivals, with Kaneko pausing from eating her chocolate, Akino smiling, Rias sitting at her desk, Sona and Tsubaki now giving an analytical look to Naruto, Ino, and Hinata. Something that startled all that watched them come in was the change in Naruto's facial expression. As he came in, it looked like he had the usual bright personality, but the second the door closed it shifted into a look of someone who had just entered enemy territory. Not only that, but Ino and Hinata gained a stoic visage as to not give any clues on how they really felt. Sona and Tsubaki were extremely curious about this, as they had not once seen an angry look at the almost always smiling Naruto, and to see Ino and Hinata have a face that would put professional poker players to shame was just as surprising. Sure, they were told about it by Rias, but to see it is another matter. Kaneko got up from her seat and moved closer to the three with no reservation. She looked up at Naruto and narrowed her eyes, trying to figure something out. Naruto looked down at Kaneko with a quirked eyebrow. What? Kaneko looked him up and down before saying, no chakra, how? Naruto gave a small smile as he brought up his hand and poked her right between the eyes. We need answers first. After we get them, maybe we will give our own. He then turned a hard look at Rias, but that all depends on her. So let's start with what you did to Issei. Rias flinched at the look Naruto gave, but she knew this was coming. She looked to Issei and began to speak. Well, I suppose we should get this meeting started. And so it went, with Rias explaining the three warring factions, what Issei had become, the reason for his death, and what role Yuma had in it. Throughout all this, Naruto paid rapt attention to the details that were given. In all honesty, he thought that it sounded similar to what would be done in the elemental nations. However, instead of it being because of what village you are from, it is more on what race you are. Something that bugged him was, since when does being one or the other affect the kind of person you are? It should be one's actions that should be judged, not what they are. He also kept his gaze at Issei, as he could not only see the hurt he had when told that Yuma was just doing this to get the chance to kill him. He could not imagine how it must feel for someone you care about just acting so they could kill you. Or rather, how it would feel like if you were oblivious to their intentions. So that is everything. You have become one of us now, Rias finished as she and the rest in the room unleashed their wings. Issei was stunned by this, but for some reason, something burst from his back, causing him to turn his head to see that he has the same kind of wings as them. Naruto looked over the wings that were now on their backs and was interested in the way they look. But this was a minor thing, since despite the fact that everything she had said was true, she still avoided one thing. Why don't you tell him that you used him as bait to lure out the fallen angels? Rias sighed as she knew she would need to come clean. I was unsure if the fallen angels were really after Issei at the time. We had discovered them in our territory not that long ago, and when we discovered them around our school, we wanted to see what they were really after. I had wanted to be absolutely sure that what they really wanted was Issei, or it was just a passing notion. As such, I had allowed them to date and see if she would show her true intentions and reveal some more about where they had stationed themselves. I just did not account for losing sight of Issei during their date and that being when she would strike. Naruto began walking closer to Rias, leaving Ino and Hinata where they stood. You took too great a risk and because of this Issei ended up dead and now part of something he didn't ask for. Naruto's glare was piercing and the way his eyes bore into hers almost made her feel small. Issei nervously walked up to Naruto in a placating way, "Come on Naruto. It's all good, and she saved my life as well. I don't mind being part of this devil faction." Naruto turned his head to look at Issei. "Issei, you have become part of a war that you didn't even know about." He turned back to Rias. "You used an innocent civilian to lure out someone that you knew was after something. If you wanted to find something out, you should have tailed her or did some digging of your own." Rias sadly nodded. "Yes, I know my mistake, but I have given him something that has made him more than what he used to be." But was it his choice? Sona walked up to stand by Rias. It was a calculated risk and she already regrets the fact that she had made this mistake. You do not need to make her feel worse for it. Naruto shifted his gaze from Rias to Sona. "I know she regrets it. But her choice still got him killed and thrusted him into your war." He then turned his head to look at Akino, Kiba, and Kaneko. "Be mad at me all you want, but she is still in the wrong here." This stunned them as they were sure that they weren't showing any signs of anger. They all had the same thought. How did he know we were angry? Naruto turned to stand back with Ino and Hinata before leaning on the wall. "You said something about Issei having a sacred gear." Rias nodded as she felt not only reprimanded but a bit miffed that she would not be able to get answers to her questions about him. She knew that at the moment she was not his favorite person and if she started asking now, he would most likely not give them to her. She didn't need to get worse on his bad side when what she really needed was help. She looked to Issei and chose to try and get him to unlock his sacred gear. "Right, we shall try and have you activate your sacred gear." Issei suddenly felt self-conscious now that all eyes are on him. Rias gestured to him. "Issei, raise your hand." Issei responded accordingly and raised his hand as if he was in a classroom. "Right." Rias smiled at how nervous he was acting. It was cute in a way. "Relax. I want you to focus on the power you have deep inside. You should be able to call upon it when you find it." Issei shut his eyes with his arms still in the air and tried to do as he was told. "Look for the power I have." For several seconds he tried to find something that would call upon his power. He scrunched his eyes tighter in concentration but he could still not find anything. PFF'd snicker. Giggle. "Naruto. Ino, don't be rude." Issei opened his eyes and turned around to see Naruto pressing his face into the wall in a clear attempt to hide his laughter and Ino hiding a clearly visible smile behind her hand with Hinata trying to get them to stop. "Hey, what's so funny?" Naruto pushed off the wall and did his best to stifle his laughter. "Sorry snicker, but the look on your face was just too funny." Issei huffed as he looked away. "Well, this is the first time I'm doing something like this." Naruto finally stopped his snickering and took a deep breath as he gestured for Hinata to follow and they walked over to stand in front of Issei, with Hinata standing to his left and Rias on his right. He grabbed his still lifted arm and brought it down while also bringing up his other hand before placing his hands in an open palm praying form. "I want you to close your eyes, and focus right here." He pressed his finger to the center of his torso. "Clear your mind of everything and focus on this point in your body. And don't try to force it. It should be a natural part of your body so you won't need to force it to come out, just call it." Issei decided to go with what the said and closed his eyes and began to focus on the spot that Naruto pointed at. Sona and Tsubaki were interested in how Naruto seemed to have this idea of bringing out a sacred gear. The way he said made it seem like he had done something like this before. Sona just found Naruto more fascinating the more she learned about him, and despite his animosity towards Rias, it seemed that it was only towards her and not the rest. Naruto looked at Hinata and asked her, "Activate your Byakugan and see if you can see the energy source, magic I believe they called it." Hinata nodded as she brought up her hand into the tiger seal before activating her dujutsu. This had caught the attention of everyone as they were interested in what had happened to the girl's eyes. Naruto paid no mind to them as his focus was on Issei. He knew they would ask about it, but that didn't mean he would answer them. He still wasn't sure if he should divulge anything to them. After a few seconds, he stepped forward and bonked Issei in the head, no thinking of. Issei rubbed the spot he was bonked before looking to Naruto. How did you know? Naruto gave a knowing smirk before stepping back. You're easy to read. He actually felt the guy's perversion rise, and with how Issei was, it was the only reason he would have those feelings. Issei was thinking of. Now try again and don't think of. Issei sighed as he tried again. He wasn't used to doing something like this, but Naruto seemed to know what he was talking about, so he would trust him. Naruto looked to Hinata and whispered, anything. Hinata narrowed her eyes as she nodded, yes. In fact, I can see everyone here has a type of energy inside their bodies. It is different from chakra, but it is there. I also see a chess piece within several of them. Ino quirked an eyebrow as she decided to join her fellow shinobi. Chess piece. Inside them. Hinata nodded as she spoke but kept her main gaze on Issei. I had seen it early when we were watching him with his friends. But I had not focused on it enough and I assumed he merely had it in his jacket pocket. There is a number attached to it as well. The number, 8 feet. Sona and Rias had their minds running a mile a minute as they couldn't believe that Hinata was able to see the chess pieces inside their peerage. As far as they knew, there was no real way to do such a thing, but here she was seeing the pieces they used. Sona focused on Hinata's eyes as she adjusted her glasses. What are those eyes of hers? Are they an unknown sacred gear of something else? Hinata then noticed something happening within Issei. Wait, there is something. Issei had tuned out the world around him. He tried his hardest not to think of like he normally would, and once he was able to clear his mind, he found himself in front of a raging inferno with a large silhouette gazing down at him. That boy is an interesting one. If he was able to instruct you into contacting me. The figure looked down at Issei and nodded. Well, partner, it is a pleasure to finally speak with you. I am known as DxD. Issei was awed by the large being before the inferno grew, and he covered his eyes as it brightened. Issei's eyes snapped open as his left hand gained a red gauntlet with a green gem on the back of his hand and yellow spikes that ran down at level 2. Whoa, what's this? Rias stepped forward with a wide smile on her face. That is your sacred gear. It is what the fallen angels wanted to destroy by killing you. Sacred gears have been in existence throughout all of human history. Most of the time in high-standing figures and those known for exceptional achievements. Naruto looked to Hinata and she answered without him asking. His energy had jumped in potency, but it is mainly focused on that gauntlet. Ino nodded as it would make sense if the object itself was said to be powerful. It was then that she had asked something in a whisper that they needed to know. Will you be able to tell if anyone else has magic? We haven't really been looking, but if we are on their radar now, we need to be ready. Hinata nodded as she whispered back. I had not focused my sight on anything other than chakra. Now that I know what to look for, I can tell if someone is from the devil faction. I would need to see a fallen angel to see if there is any difference, but I will keep an eye open for any irregularities. Naruto nodded as he turned back to Rias and Issei as the former had finished telling Issei about what they do in general. Sounds like the missions back home, but simple fetish requests. It was one of the things Rias described some of the contracts they had taken. It was vague in a way but also clear on what could be asked of them. His sweat dropped when he heard Rias tell Issei that if he worked hard enough he would be able to have servants of his own, which got Issei to shout out. I'm going to have a harem. The three shinobi sweat dropped at that declaration as Issei kept proving how odd he could be. Naruto rolled his eyes at this. Of course you use that to get him motivated to do it. Though Naruto felt that his statement was not entirely true. Is there something more to it, or am I losing my touch? Doubt it. Where the hell have you been, Yu-chan? Sleeping. But this whole devil talk sounded interesting. Maybe, but I don't need to change anymore. I'm already not human. I don't need to become something else. What about your mates? This had caused Naruto to pause for a minute. He wasn't interested in it, but one thing did catch his attention in becoming a devil thing: immortality. But not for him. He was practically already immortal, but Ino and Hinata weren't. He knew that he would outlive them and it hurt his heart to think about it, but if they were to become one, they could stay with him, forever. But the idea of them becoming the servant of someone did not sit right with him. He would need to discuss this with them, but right now was not the time. Naruto then saw that Issei was packing up some flyers that he was asked to send out to the public. On-the-job experience. Not bad, but he watched as Issei made his way out of the clubroom and off to do the job. As the boy left, Naruto spoke. Issei, stay on your toes. Devil you may be, but the fallen angels will most likely still be after you. Issei felt all his nerves fail him and he at first wanted to turn around and not do this delivery, but harem. 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 He regained his nerve and nodded towards Naruto. Thanks for the heads up. Naruto smiled as he nodded to the brunette before he watched him leave. He kept his gaze on the door as he sensed the slight fear the guy had to pinpoint where he was in the building. He didn't even turn his head when Rias began to speak to his group. Okay, now we can move the conversation onto you three. Naruto felt the prankster in him show itself after so long of being dormant. And despite the fact that he wanted to do something grand to someone, he right now had a mission he needed to do. Ino, Hinata, let's go. The three began to head towards the door, which shocked everyone else in the room. Rias took a step forward as she called out, hold on. You said you would answer some of our questions. Sona stood next to Rias as she nodded. She is right, Uzumaki-san. I do not see you as someone who would go against his word. Naruto had opened the door and paused before leaving. He turned around with his foxy grin clearly visible. I said that it would depend on whether or not I like your answers to what happened to Issei, and even if they are satisfactory, I never said when I would tell you. Rias was wide-eyed as she realized what he was doing, with Sona actually smiling back at the boy. Clever. Naruto then gained a dead serious look. Don't forget that I am still pissed at you. He pointed at Rias while ignoring the clear signs the others were ready to defend her, whether verbally or physically. I'll give you your answers, but only when I feel I can trust you. Right now, we are going to keep an eye on Issei. He may have power now, but that doesn't make him a fighter. We will talk when I can trust you, Rias. He then moved aside for Hinata and Ino to move past him before walking out himself. Before he closed the door, he looked back, gave his usual happy smile, and did a two-fingered salute. Catch ya later. And with that, he closed the door. Everyone there stood in silence until Akino giggled. It would seem he got the better of us. Rias groaned as she slumped a bit. I'm really going to have to gain his trust if we want to know more about him. I didn't even get the chance to ask him about joining. Though with how he feels about me, I doubt he would even consider it. Kiba smiled sheepishly. Well, he did say he would give us answers later on. Let's just hope it's soon. Kaneko took a bite out of a slice of cake she now had. Hopefully. Despite her usual stoic appearance, her mind was thinking about the three. There was something about the chakra they used that seemed interesting to her. More so Naruto than the other two. Hinata may have been the only one that let her chakra be known, but she still remembered the brief moment all three used chakra before. She wanted to know more about them. Unbeknownst to the rest of the room, a small mouse was hiding under the couch out of sight and listening to the conversation they had. Later, the three shinobi were on a rooftop watching Issei leaving his client's apartment. Ino blew out a puff of air on her bang as they watched Issei walk his bike down the street. I can't believe they summon devils to their house to cosplay and do weird things like that. Hinata smiled as she leaned on Ino's shoulder, as she was at least enjoying the night. Everyone has their own form of entertainment. Naruto was on one knee as he kept his focus on the boy and the oncoming enemy. True. Like how you like my special massages. Naruto turned his head to the right to give Ino a knowing look. Ino and Hinata blushed as they both enjoyed those massages. Ino then smiled at Naruto as she spoke softly. Maybe when we get home, we can have another session. Naruto would have loved to say yes, but he shook his head instead. I doubt we would have the time. Here they come. All three got up and made their move. Issei was grumbling to himself on how he messed up on his job. I can't believe that I didn't even get him to sign a pact. All we did was talk about Dragon Boy Z the entire time. What the hell is wrong with me? He was suddenly brought out of his thoughts when he suddenly felt something wrong. He turned around as his gut was telling him that there was danger heading his way. This feeling, is it the same guy from before? Fascinating. Issei saw that it was a voluptuous woman walking towards him with an irritated look on her face. Who are you? The woman kept her focus on the boy in front of her as she continued to stride forward. I was expecting something more, but I was clearly sent here for you. My name is Calawarner and I will be your executioner. She unleashed her black feathered wings as she prepared to attack. Issei grew worried at the sight of those wings as he immediately remembered Yuma. Oh no. Don't take this personally, but you have to die. She brought her arm up to summon a light spear. Before she could even channel the magic to create her weapon, golden chains erupted from all around her before wrapping around every one of her limbs and wings before bringing them in another chain encircling her. Calawarner looked at the chains in panic as she could not tell where the chains were coming from. What the hell? Sorry, but you aren't going to be executing anyone. Hinata. Hinata dropped onto the ground in front of Calawarner and struck the woman in the visible areas, disabling the woman entirely. Calawarner coughed up blood as the attack she was just hit with caused her insides to scream in pain. Naruto dropped in with the chains coming out of his back. He walked up to the woman that was now glaring at him, but she could not say anything since the strikes that Hinata did caused her throat to be so sore that it was almost like someone dumped acid down her mouth. The last guy got away before I could capture him. You on the other hand won't get the chance. Issei was surprised to see them here as he had no idea they were close by. Naruto, Hinata. Don't forget about me. Ino landed next to Hinata with her hands in her family's jutsu pose, mind destruction jutsu. She made sure to hold back enough not to cause any damage to the mind. She only used enough force to knock the woman out. Issei shouldn't be surprised about what happened, but it happened so suddenly that he was still a little shocked. What? Naruto kept his chains around the knocked out woman as he looked to Issei. We were watching over you to make sure that you don't run into trouble. He looked at both girls and nodded before he summoned a single shadow clone. They'll take you home to make sure that nothing bad happens. Ino, Hinata, and the clone walked up to Issei as if they were honor guards. Naruto smiled at the flustered look Issei gained before he nodded to his girls. You know where to meet up. With that he shunshined away with the fallen angel in tow. Issei looked to the clone in confusion as he reached out to poke him, only to have his hand slapped away. I'm not some museum piece that you can ignore the sign and poke. Issei rubbed the hand that was slapped before he looked at the clone in awe. So, you can clone yourself. The clone smiled at Issei's awestruck expression. Yep. Comes in handy when I need to be in two places at once. Issei couldn't help his excitement as this was the kind of power you would see in anime or manga. So do you use it to skip class and do your own thing? The clone's smile dropped as he felt two pairs of eyes glaring at the back of his head. Boss, tried that once, he got the lecture of a lifetime. Issei turned his head at the two girls behind them only to see them smile at him innocently. He tilted his head in confusion as he asked them, what's he mean by that? Ino waved her hand dismissively. Oh, nothing for you to worry about. The clone grimaced at how sweet those words came out of her mouth. Even if they aren't devils, I have two demonesses for girlfriends. Evil. Elsewhere. Naruto appeared in a forest, miles away from the city with the fallen angel laying on the ground still wrapped up in his chains. This would have worked better if I was in a dark room with only one light and a single chair. It was then that something clicked in his mind. Is that just the stereotypical interrogation room? It was like that in Konoha and I saw it in several movies. He shrugged his shoulders as it wasn't important right now. He made sure the barrier tags were still in place as this was a spot that he and the girls trained in secret. Looking at the still unconscious woman, He brought up his hand into a gun motion and used his extreme chakra control to shoot out a splash of water on her face. Bah! Cough wah! Calawarner looked around to see that she was no longer in the city. It was then that she felt that she was wrapped up in chains, including her wings. What the hell? Rise and shine, Sleeping Beauty. Calawarner looked up to see the boy that had spontaneously popped up out of nowhere when she was going to kill the brunette. You. Naruto smirked before he went into over-dramatics. Me. He pointed at himself before pointing at other things. You, that tree, that rock, the sky. And they all lived happily ever after. Calawarner grit her teeth as this boy was playing around like a fool. She flexed her hand and tried to summon a light spear so she could flick it at him. Keyword. Tried. Wah. All she could do was have some light particles flicker in her hand before they disappeared. Interesting. Calawarner glared up at the boy to see him looking at her with his hand on his chin. It would seem that my chains disrupt your magic, just as much as it does chakra, or it could be Hinata's hits did it, but we can worry about that later. Naruto used his chains to lift her into the air so he could be more eye to eye with her. Now, I'm a little pissed that the trench coat guy got away from me since I wanted some answers about what you guys have planned, but I guess I will get them from you instead. He tilted his head to avoid the glob of spit she shot at him. Calawarner smirked at him as she wasn't one to talk. What would a little boy like you be able to do to me? You won't get shit. Naruto gained a sadistic smile on his face. You don't seem to understand the situation you're in. You can't access your power, you're stuck here, and I have a prankster side of me that hasn't been used in a very long time. Calawarner scoffed. Pranks? Like that would do anything to me. Naruto conceded that notion. True, pranks, in general, are harmless. But they would just be for my own fun. I have a friend, Anko, that was an expert in torture and interrogation. She taught me a thing or two and now I get to try them out on you. He walked up to her before moving to her wings. Let's start small. Does it hurt when I pluck out your feathers? He grabbed one before plucking it hard. Calawarner winced at it but remained silent. Unfortunately, this did not go unnoticed. Oh, so it does. Let's see how long it takes till you at least squeak. He plucked out a few more and smiled. Don't worry. From what I can tell, you have plenty of feathers to pluck, so I'm going to keep going till you are bare. The thought of losing all her feathers caused some dread to enter her heart. She attempted to retract her wings, but the chains seemed to be keeping them out as well. Hey, wait. She winced as he started. This little feather went to market. This little feather went home. He looked at her with an all too happy smile. Don't worry, this is only light teasing. We will get to the real fun afterward. Calawarner did not know if she should be afraid or not, as the boy was right. She was powerless at the moment. And these little feathers went wee. Next morning, Issei was walking to school still thinking about what happened yesterday. Man, to be able to clone yourself like that. If I could do that, I wouldn't have to go to school so early in the morning. Man, that would be so friggin' awesome. Kya. Issei turned his head when he heard a female scream, only to be greeted by the panty-clad of the said girl. He gained a wide perverted smile as he stared at it. The girl winced as she got up from the ground and rubbed the side of her face. I fell down again. I'm such a klutz. She returned around and got into a sitting position, not realizing that her skirt had risen up and her panties were still visible. Issei couldn't help but notice how cute the girl was, but he didn't recognize her. Whoa, who's that? In the trees behind Issei, Naruto focused his gaze on the girl as he had been on the lookout for someone. Long blonde hair, big green eyes, foreign, and wearing clothes for a nun. Must be her, Asia Argento. Run in with a nun. You gotta be kidding me. Was what Naruto mumbled to himself as he watched Issei and Asia converse with each other as they made their way to the church that Asia was supposed to be at. The first thing that happened was something you would see in manga, as the girl had fallen over, giving them a clear view of her panties and act as if it was just her clumsiness. But after she got up and Issei got out of his perverted gazing, the two had begun to converse with each other. And Issei wasn't perving over her as he would normally any cute, or breathing girl that exists. Okay, he may be being a bit harsh on how Issei was, but that was because he had caught Issei trying to peep on his girls a few times. Maybe not specifically them, but Ino and Hinata were there, so he can be a little petty against the brunette. Even if he was a little sorry for him being thrust into a war. Speaking of which, I'm going to have to ask her about this. He looked back to Issei and Asia and couldn't help but find it interesting that Issei was acting like a normal person, asking her about why she moved her from the church she came from. Though there was a little sadness there that told Naruto there might have been a story behind it, but he was more focused on the incoming negativity. It wasn't moving fast, so he didn't need to rush, but he was ready for anything. Issei was smiling as he was carrying Asia's luggage and talking to the girl. So you are here to become part of the church in town? Asia nodded as she brought her hands up in prayer. Yes, I was transferred here as a way of expanding our teachings. I am thankful to our Lord to have been blessed in coming to this beautiful city. Issei brought up his free hand to his head as he winced at the mention of the Almighty, though he didn't know about that yet. Asia looked at him and grew worried at his distressed face. Oh my God, are you alright? Issei nodded as he cracked open an eye. Yeah, just a headache. He took a deep breath and was going to wait for the pain to subside, but he saw Asia gesture for him to lower himself. Not seeing the harm he did as asked. After he saw her bring her arms up to his head, he felt relief as the pain in his head subsided. Asia brought her hands up and began to use her ability to heal the pain Issei was feeling. Naruto focused on Asia's hands as the green glow reminded him a bit of the medical jutsu Ino and Hinata used. I'm not sensing any chakra, so maybe it's like the devil's magic. He was now understanding why the fallen angels had invested much into this girl. Though he felt that he would need to pay the defeathered fallen angel another visit since she had failed to mention this to him. Well, more like she will be defeathered again since he found out that they regrow after some time. Though he figured that it required magic since the regrowth was slow thanks to his chains and now seals. Issei opened his eyes fully to see a green glow around Asai's hands. Wow, thanks. The pain is gone. Asia gave a bright smile to him. I'm glad you feel better. Issei smiled back as he stood up straight. That's some power you got there. Must be cool to be able to heal others. She nodded before her smile dropped a bit. She was able to hide it well from Issei, but Naruto saw right through the forced one. Naruto hopped onto another branch and saw that they were now close to the church. Something else he thought was interesting was the one that was closing in on them had stopped and was just staying where they were. We gotta watch her. Issei looked up towards the church and felt every fiber of his being telling him he should get as far away from it as he can, but he needed to make sure that Asia made it. Well, there it is. He lifted his hand and pointed to the dilapidated building. You sure that this is the church you need to be at? It doesn't look like it's been in use for a while. Asia nodded. Yes, this is the place. Don't worry, I'm sure that we will be fixing it up soon. Issei shrugged as he put the luggage down. Well, if you're sure, I gotta get going. I have something I gotta do. Maybe we can hang out again sometime. Asia beamed at this as she bounced on her feet. I would love that. It must be God's will that I meet such a kind person like you. Issei once again felt like a knife pierced his head, but he grit his teeth and did his best not to show it. Through his teeth he grunted, I hope we meet again, Asia. He waved at the girl as he turned and began walking away. Asia smiled as she watched Issei walk away. Well, aren't you all buddy-buddy with him? Asia looked behind her to see the person she was supposed to meet. Good morning, Rainer. Rainer walked up to Asia as she looked over to where Issei went. Little perv is still alive, huh? She could figure out why he was still alive, but at the moment, he wasn't that important since she can't bring attention to her group. She looked to Asia and nodded. Well, we should get you settled in. Let's go. She gestured for Asia to head over to the church, which the young blonde girl complied. Rainer turned back to glare in the direction of Issei. If he tells his master about us, we are going to have to fast-track the ceremony. She turned to follow Asia to the church while looking at the girl with a look of sadistic glee. Naruto kept his gaze on the retreating two as his nose twitched. So you're the one that killed him. His gaze fell on Asia and couldn't see any reason she would join a group that felt like they could slit your throat at the drop of a hat. I can think about that later, but for now. He then looked at Rainer's back as a sadistic smile came upon his face. Time to have some fun. He created 4 coals before they transformed into crows and flew off towards the church. The original could feel his prankster side coming to the surface, but he would have to hold off on it for now. He has some things he needs to do, not only to mess with the flying black chickens and the devils that have their eye on him, but he also has a trip he feels he needs to make now. Kuo Academy. You must never go near the church again, Issei. But why? Issei told Rias about the odd feeling he had when he went over to the church while holding back on his encounter with Asia. Rias, Akino, and himself were in an empty area of the old school building as they discussed these matters. Rias stood in front of a stained glass window as she spoke to her new pawn. If a devil is found close to a church, it can cause problems for angels and devils. Since we are still on strained terms with them, they can see a devil closing in on the church as a potential action against them. Not only that, but the exorcists that are affiliated with the church use sacred gears. And they will use them against you if they have the chance. Issei thought about Asia's power and couldn't help but think. Was that a sacred gear? Is she an exorcist? Akino moved to stand next to Rias as she continued where her king left off. You were fortunate that we were able to bring you back as a devil, but if you are to die again, there is no coming back. You will forever be gone. Issei looked down as this all was starting to sound as if he would not be able to meet with Asia again. Geez, morbid aren't ya? The 3 devils jumped as they heard someone speak and looked around to try and find the voice, since it was one they did not recognize. Rias narrowed her eyes as she flexed her hand ready to launch an attack. Show yourself. Suddenly from the ceiling dropped a figure that landed in the middle of the 3, getting them all to jump back. The figure stood up and they were all startled to see it was Naruto. Issei went wide-eyed as he pointed, "Where the hell did you come from?" Naruto turned to look at Issei as he smirked. He then spoke in a voice that sounded like a gruff man. "What are you talking about? I've been here the whole time." Rias did not drop her guard as she lifted her hand and was ready to fire at him. "Who are you? You may have his appearance, but you sound nothing like him." Naruto turned to look at Rias as he smiled and spoke in his normal voice. "Good to see that you are wary about obvious things, but relax. It's actually me. I just felt like messing with you 3. Rias flared her power more with Akino surging her lighting. "You expect me to believe you after you come here with an obvious flaw in your disguise?" "I don't know." Rias froze as she heard Naruto's voice right behind her and hear him whisper in her ear. "Do you expect an enemy to not do something to you if he was able to get behind you?" Rias then felt him pat her cheek, which caused her to flare her wings and jump away. She turned to see another Naruto. She landed and looked confused at what she was seeing. "What?" The Naruto that was behind her shrugged as he spoke. "One of my abilities." The other Naruto disappeared in a puff of smoke before Naruto moved to the railing and leaned on it. "You can relax, I was just messing with you since you guys know that I am not a normal human." Akino pulled back her magic but kept her stare at him. "And you just so happened to be spying on us?" "Not really. I was spending the morning following up on something I was able to find out. As it turns out that the church is the base of the group of fallen angels and they have some sort of plan in the works. Something to do with a newcomer to their ranks." His eyes shifted to Issei for a brief second before looking Rias in the eye. "And from what you just said, you won't go there because it will cause issues for both sides. But you should know about where they are in case something happens." Akino and Rias looked at each other before the raven-haired beauty spoke up. "Yes, that is all true, but why are you telling us this?" Naruto smirked as he pushed off the railing. "Because I am going to be wrecking their plans." The 3 looked shocked at his declaration as they were not expecting this. Rias stepped forward as she asked, "Do you know what you are saying? If you mess with the fallen angels, then they are going to have the biggest migraine any supernatural has ever had." Was he being a bit? Yes. But he already started messing with them, they just don't know it yet. "You say that you won't go there because you are devils and it could cause problems for your side. But I am not sided with anyone, so if things go wrong, no one will be to blame but me. Rias could see his point in a way. He had said that he wasn't a yokai, but there was still an issue. Not only that, but she was slightly worried he was getting into something way over his head. Still, your chakra could be seen as the yokai moving into territory that isn't theirs. If you are caught, not only will the fallen angels deal with you, but the devils will begin to go against the yokai. Naruto didn't lose his confident smirk. I've been hiding here for 4 years with only you and Sona having a feeling about me. And yet you had nothing solid to go on. I'm sure that I can go about unnoticed. He hardened his gaze a bit as he looked to Rias. Look, I'm still a little mad at you for getting Issei into this war, and it will be a while till I don't want to hit you. Akeno tensed up in preparation to defend her king while Issei shouted out, "Hey!" Naruto ignored them as he continued, "But I know you aren't a bad person. Just don't do it again." The devils relaxed a bit since it didn't look like he was going to do anything, as Rias still felt some guilt at what caused the tension between her group and his. Naruto looked to the side at a clock that was on the wall and smiled. He should be there soon. This confused the group as they were not sure what he meant by that. Naruto then reached behind him and pulled something out before he tossed it to Akeno. She caught it and looked to see it was a feather duster. But there was something odd about it. The feathers looked familiar to her. She looked up to Naruto, who smiled at her. I said I learned a few things about the fallen angels. The one I captured was incooperative, so I had to make her talk. It was a simple thing, but I was able to get a few items from our conversation. Pillow, feather dusters, and, he pulled out another item and showed it to the group. A few quill pens. He placed it on the rail before he walked away. The devils were stunned about what he just did, but one of them had a different reaction. Akeno could imagine what Naruto had done to the fallen angel and licked her lips as she brought the present to her face and rubbed her cheek on it. Era, a man after my own heart. She rubbed her legs as she tried her hardest not to let her sadistic side get to her. Not that she was trying so hard. Naruto shivered as he heard what she said and felt the emotion coming from her. He needed to get out before Akeno did something. He looked back to Rias and gave a foxy smile. Before I go. He brought his hand up into a hand sign, causing Rias's cheek to light up as kanji appeared on it. The light caused them to cover their eyes before it died down. Naruto held in his laughter as he saw his work done, and then he went up in a puff of smoke. Akeno and Issei were surprised to see Naruto disappear like the last one, but when they turned to look at Rias, they were surprised at what they saw. Akeno giggled at this as she was liking this side of Naruto. Era. He is just full of surprises. Issei was mad at what Naruto had done as he thought it defiled a part of one of the goddesses of the school. Rias was confused at their reaction but saw Akeno bring up a mirror. What she saw brought a tick mark on her head. Her face, which was usually blemish-free and untouched by makeup, was now painted as if she was a clown with a big red nose to go with it. Oh, I'm going to kill him for this. Elsewhere, Naruto laughed as he got the memories of his clone. I'm sure she is going to be mad about that. Wonder if she is going to do anything about it. He smiled as he leaned back as a sign flew over him before he sat back up with his arms crossed. He looked around to see the passing streets, buildings, and signs. Well, he stood up with his clothes and hair whipping in the wind. I can take the rest of the way on foot. He leapt to the side and landed on one of the passing buildings as he began to jump in the same direction the bullet train he was just on was heading. Putting a bit more speed, he moved past the train and getting closer to where he wanted to be. He could have made it faster than the train, but riding on top of the train allows him to just enjoy the ride. He made it to his destination and paused as another memory came to him and he winced at the angered look Ino gave his clone. Great. Ino's going to kill me. He was at least thankful that she allowed his clone to make another one before she hit him. He didn't need the student council to get on his case. He walked into a park and smiled as he was enjoying the full display of nature here. He continued deeper into the park before he paused. Looks like I've been caught. He felt himself being watched and tensed his muscles, ready for the coming ambush. He continued walking, ready to counter. As he walked past a tree, he reacted to the figure that came out of the tree. He spun around and pounced on them as they rolled on the grass. Squeal asterisk ahahahahahaha stop Naruto ni. Never. He tickled his assailant until he saw she now had tears coming from her eyes. He let up and smiled as he moved back. I see you still have that alert tag if you were here before I walked in the park. You almost had me that time, Kuno. Kuno panted for a bit before she caught her breath and gave a pouting glare, liar. Naruto chuckled as he shrugged, how have you been, Kuno? It's been a while since I've seen you. Kuno strengthened her glare though it just looked cute on her, I've been well. But you haven't come to visit in a long time. I was starting to think you wouldn't come back. Naruto rubbed the back of his head as he sat down cross-legged. Sorry, I've been busy with something really important but some recent things have come up that make me really think about it. He then brought a hand up and rubbed her head, but I'm happy to see you again, Kuno. He smiled as she swatted his hand away but he could tell that she was happy that he had done that. He then sighed and smiled as he closed his eyes. And how have you been, Yusaka? He felt a pair of arms wrapped around his neck as the female fox woman hugged him from behind and leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm happy to see you doing well, Naruto. We missed your company, you know. Naruto chuckled for a second before he turned serious. Yusaka, I need to ask you something. Yusaka turned her head to look at him. Yes. What can you tell me about the Fallen Angel faction? Yusaka was a little stunned before she pulled away and moved around to be in front of Naruto. I imagine that you had a run-in with them. Naruto shrugged as Kuno jumped onto his lap and he wrapped his arms around her. Not so much a run-in, rather they are doing something in the town I'm staying at and I plan on messing with them. Yusaka fixed her dress as she sat on her knees in front of him. It is not wise to mess with such a faction as many of them tend to be vindictive. But, to put it in simple terms, they are angels who have fallen from the grace of God due to them submitting to their wants and desires. Naruto released 3 of his tails and picked Kuno up with one before tossing her in the air and catching her with the other 2. This was something that he found Kuno enjoyed, despite her being old enough to find more mature forms of entertainment. But they are still angels, aren't they? Shouldn't they still be accepted with the angels? Yusaka shook her head. No. In the eyes of the angels, they are no better than devils, and yet in the eyes of the devils, they are just as hated as the angels. So they are in the middle ground forming their own faction and warring both sides. Kuno was now hanging upside down using her tails to hang off one of his. Yusaka could not help but smile at the way her daughter interacted with Naruto. Normally, Kuno would act very mature, well beyond her years, yet when Naruto showed up, it was like a switch was flipped and the child in her bursts out. A key example is how Kuno was jumping around 4 of his tails now in an attempt to grab the one with the black stripe going down it. Naruto paused his tail's movement as his face turned into a glare, so the fallen are victims of circumstances then. He winced slightly as Kuno had grabbed onto his tail tightly. But with the feeling I get from them, they aren't good people either. Yusaka shook her head. In my experience, it is one's character that defines them. Though I cannot deny that many in the Fallen Angel faction are cruel and should not be trusted. Naruto nodded as he agreed with what she said. He sighed as he felt Kuno was now on his shoulders and he retracted his tails. The info he just gained wasn't really something new or something difficult to figure out. He was sure he could have figured it out with a little digging or another torture session with his already captive fallen angel. But this was also a chance for him to get away from the city that was at the moment festering with negative emotions. With how constant it was, he was getting a metaphorical headache. And with the abundant number of clones he has in the town, his metaphorical headache will become a real-life migraine with how long his clones have been out and how much memory and negativity they must feel. And there were a few things he was sure she knew that he wouldn't get from his captive. What about the higher-ups? Is there a leader in the Fallen Angel faction? Yusaka nodded. Yes. His name is Azazel. He is a fallen angel of 12 wings, which shows his level of power. He is someone that you do not wish to battle. But he has a very laid-back and eccentric tendencies. Naruto couldn't help but think. Sounds almost like a combo of Kakashi and pervy sage. The way Azazel was described just sounded like it, as Kakashi could be seen as laid back and the word, eccentric, was obvious. So in terms of power, Yusuke sighed. He is one of the strongest beings you could meet among the fallen angels. It is best not to antagonize him in any way. Naruto crossed his arms as he looked up at the sky and sarcastically said, "Sounds fun." He didn't have much to base this, Azazel's, strength, since he has been keeping a low profile and avoiding conflict with any of these factions until now. His vision of the sky was then replaced by the smiling face of Kuno. "So how long are you staying? Will you stay all day?" Naruto chuckled as he brought up a hand and poked her in the nose. "I wish I could stay, but you know that none of the other yokai like me and hate it when they see me with you too. Also, with me messing with the burnt chickens back at Kuo, I should be there when all their plans fall apart and I can laugh in their face." His face became sadistic for a second before schooling it as he saw the sad look Kuno gave him. "But I can stay here for a few hours until I have to go back, or one of your worrying bodyguards finds you too." Yusaka then brought up a hand to cup Naruto's face and bring his gaze back to her. "Since I have you here, have you given my offer some thought? I would like to hear your answer to what I had asked you some time ago." Naruto sighed as he looked into her eyes. "When you brought it up before, I knew I couldn't because at the time I was still working on something for those close to me. But recently, they had brought up the idea that I should accept my circumstances and move forward. Though they said that I can still work on it, I don't need to spend all my time on it. Maybe I can take you up on the offer." He looked up to see Kuno beaming at him. "What do you think, Kuno?" Kuno pouted as her answer was obvious. "You know what I want." Naruto chuckled as he looked back to Yusaka, who leaned forward and placed a kiss on his cheek. "Take your time. It is something you would really think about." Naruto chuckled at this. "Given how I am right now, I shouldn't have to." Meanwhile, Ino huffed as she was sitting in her seat, listening to the lesson from her teacher. "I'm going to hurt Naruto the second he comes back. You know Naruto isn't doing this to make us mad. He just has a lot on his mind, especially since he has been trying to find a way for us to go back." Ino shifted her eyes to her left at Hinata, who, although looking as if she was writing notes, was just writing a list of things that they need at their home while speaking to Ino using a mental link the female blonde had established with each other while keeping the clone out of it. Something the girls use when they want to keep something from him. Ino groaned in her head as she thought back. "I still find it stupid how a guy that doesn't even like being in Konoha would want to go back there. He doesn't want to. He wants us to, you know that. He is only willing to tolerate the village as long as we are there. He believes that we would want to go back there since we have family there. My mother, father, and sister. Your mother and father, not to mention our friends. And are we missing anything from the pantry?" The Yamanaka sighed as she turned the page of the textbook that she wasn't paying attention to. She glared at the back of the Naruto clone's head, almost hoping to burst it by her stare alone. The stupid spiky-haired idiot needs to start thinking about being a little more selfish. Stop thinking about us and start thinking about himself. We even told him that he shouldn't spend so much time on that damn seal and just enjoy his time here. And I think we are running out of rice and your stash of cinnamon buns. It really is your guilty pleasure." Although her face remained stoic, the blush on Hinata's face was a clear sign of her embarrassment. "Well, with how things are starting to escalate, we now have new problems, and despite how we have remained incognito from all the devils that are here, the way the fallen angels are messing around the town are forcing us to take action, and it is not a guilty pleasure." Ino sighed again. "Not to mention that there are girls after our man from so many sides. His fans, which are about 90% of the girls in this school. Like all of the girls in the kendo club. Heck, Murayama and Katase won't stop talking about how handsome and nice he is. Then some of the devils, like Akino, who looks like she wants to tie him down and have her way with him, and Sona and Tsubaki, though they seem to be more interested in figuring out what he is rather than get with him. And let's not forget about who he is meeting right now. We haven't met, but with how Snap. Ino turned her head to Hinata to see that she had snapped the pen she had in her hand. She turned her head to see the class was looking at Hinata, but her gaze fell on the clone who was giving her a look of concern. She shook her head ever so slightly, giving the message that everything was fine. Despite feeling the rising jealousy coming from Hinata, the clone chose to accept Ino's reassurances but knew the original will be bringing this up later. Ino handed Hinata another pen and spoke to the class. It was an old pen that she apparently gripped too hard. Seeing the class accept her excuse, she looked forward and continued to speak to Hinata through their mental link. You knew that he might attract others. We've seen it the very first week we started this school. It was only a matter of time before a few started to actually like him rather than be attracted to him. Hinata was doing her best not to snap the new pen in her hand as she spoke. But why should we even consider having someone else be with him? Hinata, he is already with us. Two at the same time. As much as I want to keep it at just that, we would be hypocritical denying someone that actually cares about him to be denied being with him. The three of us got together because we almost lost each other, and the thought of not having the chance to be with Naruto hurt Hinata. It hurt so much as I told him how I felt the very second we almost died. And I know you felt the same. Hinata could not deny what Ino said was true. The very second Gaara's sand encased them and was about to crush them. The thought of never getting the chance to stand by Naruto, to love Naruto, to just be with Naruto, hurt more than anything else. It gave her the courage to confess as her face was covered in sand. Thanks to Naruto's clones, they had this chance, but if the clones were just a second later, they never would have had the chance. If someone actually cared about Naruto, would she have the heart to put that pain on them? Single quote. If there are any who want to be with him, we will judge them ourselves. No floozies. Ino giggled at this. Plan on scaring any other ones, huh? Hinata just puffed her cheeks and moved on. After most of the day spent talking, playing, and just enjoying each other's company, Yusaka had to return to her duties, which she knows piled up on her during this spontaneous free time. As the three were about to part ways, Naruto looked to the woman and said, "Thank you for all the info you gave me, and I swear I will have an answer for you soon." Yusaka nodded as she smiled brightly at him. "And I look forward to hearing it." Kuno was pouting at the fact that he was leaving and hugged his waist. Naruto looked down and laughed. "I'll be back soon, okay? And next time I'll bring you a treat." Kuno looked up and smiled at him. "You better." Naruto heard the train depart and looked up to see the train starting to pass. He gently removed Kuno off of him before smiling and giving the two a two-fingered salute. "I'll see you two soon." And with that, he leapt up and landed on the speeding train so he can enjoy the ride home. Yusaka smiled as she watched the train leave and sighed blissfully. She looked down at her daughter, who looked up at her with a massive smile. What do you think will be his answer? Kuno bounced on her feet. "I hope he says, yes." Yusaka nodded as she gestured for them to go. "So do I." Naruto sat on the roof of the train as he thought about what he was told. During his time with Yusaka and Kuno, the elder of the two had told him much about the fallen angels. He would have asked about the devils as well, but he didn't want to spoil all of their time with serious talk. "Yeah. I might take her up on it. Just gotta bring it up with Ino and Hinata. Just hope they don't try and kill me. I get the feeling that they will hang you by the tails. Especially the Hyuga." Naruto was a little startled by his father's sudden statement. "Where the hell have you been? You ask that as if you didn't already know I was inside you. Just woke up to tell you that it's about time you started looking at things other than getting them home." Naruto glared as he spoke. "Hey. They have family there. I figured that they wanted to get back to them. I'm sure Hinata's mother and sister miss her, and I don't even have to wonder about Inoichi and Noriko, Ino's mother. And Anko said her daughter Asa wants me to come back. But you have a chance at something different in your life in this world. And as the Yamanaka and Hyuga said, you don't have to spend all your time on that damn seal. Remember, time flows differently in this world, so you haven't missed much on their side." He sighed as he knew that Rama, Naruto's name for Kurama, was right. I know you're right. I guess I was just unsure about this world and. He stopped as he gained the memories of one of his clones. Freed, huh? That guy is just creepy. He got to his feet and jumped off the train before landing on the roof of a building and sped back home. He created a clone and dispelled it, sending a message to his other clones. This gives me the opportunity to really mess with them. But I better move it. Putting on some speed, he disappeared from sight. Issei was biking to his client's house as he thought about what he learned about his placement in the peerage. A pawn. Could I be any more pathetic? Chicks will never dig pawns. I gotta work my off if I wanna rank up. Damn it. He stopped thinking about himself being a pawn as he thought about the turn his life took. He sighed as he ran through it. Got asked out by a fallen angel that ended up killing me, got resurrected into a devil, found out that many of my classmates are supernatural beings, and met a really cute girl that I might not meet again. What kind of shitstorm did I get into? He stopped in front of the house of the person that requested a devil as he chose to think about this later on. After setting up his bike to lean on a street post, he walked up to the door before knocking. After a minute of no response, he checked the door and found it unlocked. It's unlocked. That doesn't seem safe. Hello. This is the devil you requested from Lady Grimoire. Anyone home? He took a step inside and immediately felt something tell him he shouldn't be here. What the hell? It's that feeling again. At first, he wanted to cut tail and run as his instincts told him, but he remembered how Rias had told him to come back with a pact from the client. He felt that he had been a bit of a disappointment to the one that had brought him back, so he felt that it was his obligation to come back with a pact. Shaking his head, he stepped inside the house. Sorry for the intrusion, but I'm coming in. Issei walked slowly into the house as he still felt the unnerving feeling run through him. He walked towards a doorway that had orange light coming from it and assumed that it was from the client trying to set the mood. As he entered the room, he stepped into something moist. With the dark lighting, he couldn't really tell what it was and bent down to see what it was. He dipped his fingers in it and brought it to his face. He ran his fingers over it and thought about the texture. Is this blood? He looked back down to the liquid he stepped in and followed where it was coming from. Soon he saw the chopped up pieces of a corpse. He stumbled back, with his back hitting the wall as he put his hand over his mouth to keep himself from vomiting from the sight. What the? Punish the wicked. Words to live by. Yes, wise advice to heed from a holy man. Issei looked to the one who was talking and saw a silver-haired man with a crazed look in his eyes and sticking his tongue out for no reason. What the hell? The man got up from the couch he was sitting on before walking around it to face Issei. Such a pity for you. You just walked into the wrong house, my friend. Freed Selzen here at your service. Freed then began to do a ridiculous dance by bringing his arms up and down in the air along with lifting a leg and with the corresponding leg as if his arms were pulling his legs up. And you must be the scared little whose devil this holy priest is going to exorcise. Issei pushed off the wall and stepped back from the crazed man, a priest. Freed smiled widely at his prey. Yes. I work for a certain devil purging organization, you may have heard of. Issei kept stepping back as Freed stepped forward. So you're the one that did this. He pointed at the pieces of the man he assumed was his original client. Summoning you was proof that he was no longer human. He then bent his head backward to look at the corpse, end of the line sinner. He then turned to Issei as his eye widened as he stuck his tongue out, so I had to chop him up into little tiny pieces. He then reached into his coat to grasp on some items. Putting down degenerate devils and the lost souls that cry out to them is my job. So why don't I do what I'm good at? He then pulled out a fancy designed handle in his right hand and a well-decorated hand cannon in his left. The handle then lit up as a blade of light came out. First I'm going to cut out your evil heart with my heavenly blade of light, then with my righteous gun I'm going to blow a hole in your wicked demon face. He then gained a crazed look as he stuck his tongue out again. How does that sound, devil? He then charged at Issei with his blade ready to cut the boy. Issei panicked as he began to back away from the charging man. Freed brought his blade down, smiling as he saw he was about to cut the boy. His arm came down and he eagerly waited for the spray of blood to coat him. But after a few seconds, he realized something was wrong. Issei had closed his eyes as he braced himself for the pain that he expected. That last time he was hit by one was when he was killed by Rainer, and he was told that it would hurt more now that he was a devil. But after a second of feeling nothing, he peeked through his eyelids to see what happened. Wow, I think I saw something like this in a movie once. Though no matter how you decorate it, a gun is a gun. Fried looked to the hand that was once holding his blade of light to see that his weapon was gone. He then flexed his other hand to feel that his gun was gone as well. Turning to the one that spoke, he saw a spiky-haired kid holding his holy sword of light and looking at it as if it was something he picked up from the store. Who the is this? Issei saw who it was and felt some relief. Naruto. Naruto was wearing black Anbu-style pants with steel greaves over his black boots that had steel clips. Around his waist was a burnt orange sash that functioned as a belt with the ends dangling on his right side. On his torso, he wore a short-sleeve form-fitting black shirt with his arms protected by steel bracers that had a few small seal tags on the bottom of his wrist. Around his neck was the Hokage necklace as he always wore it. And to finish it, he wore a black short-sleeve hooded long coat that had orange flames that come from the bottom hem and the tips of the flames circling around the Uzumaki swirl at the center of his back. Fried looked between the two and regained his crazed grin. Oh, another devil for me to handle. Oh, God must really love me. Naruto glared at Fried as the man just made him feel disgusted. The main reason was because he didn't feel any negativity come from the man as he killed the man. Fried was so happy in killing that he no longer had any malice in it. The man thought it was nothing big, like it was as simple as breathing. Okay, first, I'm not a devil. And second, Fried smiled wide as he was getting ready to charge at this new devil, but as he blinked, the blonde was no longer standing where he was. How does it feel when you are being chopped up? Fried was stunned at the speed of the boy, but he didn't have a chance to think about it as he fell over, as he lost his balance. He caught himself with his hands and was about to stand again, but he then noticed that his right leg was missing. It was then the massive amount of pain shot up his leg and his blood began to spray from his upper thigh, where his leg was separated. Ah! He gripped it as he could not believe what just happened. Issei was stunned at what just happened. He blinked and Naruto did something that severed the mad priest's leg. How did? Naruto walked up to him and patted him on the shoulder. You came a little faster than I had assumed, but thankfully I was able to get here fast enough. Issei looked to Naruto and asked as he shifted his gaze to the corpse on the side, but why couldn't? Naruto smiled as he leaned in closer and whispered out, don't worry about it. He looked at the corpse as Issei was looking at it as well, and they saw the corpse shimmer a bit. It's not real. I'll explain later, but right now. He looked at Fried, who was still in shock at what happened, that he didn't notice the shimmer. Naruto glared at the man as he walked closer. I'm going to deal with this piece of shit. He looked at the gun in his hand and grimaced at it before he sealed it away in a storage seal he had on his left wrist. He then picks the man up by his throat. For someone who calls himself a holy man, you have more evil than the very devils you say are the epitome of evil. Fried gripped on the hand that was holding him as he glared at the new devil. His eyes shifted to the sword of light that was in the devil's right hand and then smiled manically. Too bad for you, you shitty cunt. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a vial, popped it open, and splashed its contents on the devil's face. Ha 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 rrrrgh. Fried then felt the searing pain of losing the very hand he used to splash the devil with holy water. He usually used that to torment any devil he subdued, but he used all of the vial's content to get the devil to scream in pain, and he would have the chance to grab the sword and use it on the screaming devil. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Naruto was a little irritated at being splashed by whatever was in the glass bottle. He licked his lips to see what it was and it didn't taste like anything. After a second he realized that he was splashed by water. Did you expect something to happen? He then felt Fried punch him in the face and then he sliced off that arm as well. Ah! Naruto tilted his head to avoid a spray of blood that would have hit his face. Well, look at that. It seems you don't like it when you are chopped up into little pieces. You devil shit. Naruto was getting sick of this man. And he let go of the man's throat before quickly moving and held him by the hair. I don't like killing. He brought the man higher as he pulled the sword back, but that doesn't mean I won't do it to scum like you. Issei closed his eyes as he heard the cut and thump of what he assumed was the body dropping to the ground. Issei's eyes shot open to see that Naruto's arm was held by someone else. Someone he knew, Asia. Naruto's arm was lowered as the girl had jumped on it to lower his aim. So the ling he cut off was the remaining leg. He looked at Asai who was looking at him pleadingly. Don't hurt him anymore. Naruto stared at her pleading and teary eyes before he sighed and tossed the limbless priest onto the couch where the man was panicking at the sight of his missing limbs. He pushed Asai off his arm before he looked at Issei who was stunned at the sight of the girl. Asia, what are you here? Naruto moved over to Issei as he spoke. She is here as a way to recruit her into their ranks. The limbless over there was supposed to be her supervisor. He pointed at the man who was close to bleeding out. Asia moved over to the man and began to heal him. Issei saw the green glow from Asia's hand before looking at Naruto. What do you mean? He is working with the fallen angels and she was brought here for something. I'd tell you more but right now. A reed summoning symbol appeared in the room with Rias and her peerage coming through. Akino looked around the room and placed a hand on her face. Oh my, what a mess. Kiba lowered his sword as he saw that there was nothing to worry about. Seems we used the party. A little rude, don't you think, Naruto? Naruto shrugged as he moved over to where the priest's limbs were. Well, I did tell you to wait a certain amount of time before you come here, and as you can see, Issei is fine and no wounds are on him. Rias glared at Naruto as she was still a little peeved at him for what he did in the early morning. I still don't understand why you had us wait instead of coming here first thing to handle the exorcist. Yes, and although Issei was a few minutes early and almost threw off my plan, it still went off without a hitch. He had gathered all the limbs and piled them up on a spot in the room before he breathed out some fire and incinerated them. Now to finish things up, I'd suggest you take your leave. Not much time left before the fallen angels arrive. Kaneko felt the spark of the chakra he used and walked up to the blonde and stared up at him. Why can't I feel your chakra right now? She narrowed her eyes as he was still a mystery to them. Naruto looked at her and sighed as he poked her in the forehead, still not going to tell you. But know that I will tell you, at some point. Kaneko held her forehead as she glared at him. But suddenly he popped into existence a bag of sweets and handed it over. Fine. She then walked away to stand by Rias. Rias glared at him as she folded her arms under her bust. You kept your promise in keeping Issei safe, but she eyed the light sword in his hand. What do you plan to do with that? Naruto looked at the sword for a second until finding a switch to turn it off. He then sealed it away just like the gun. For now, I'll hold onto it. Might store it somewhere or use it as a flashlight, but better that it is away from you devils. These fallen angels and exorcists seem more wicked than you, so I'll keep it out of their hands. And what's to stop you from using it on us? Naruto put his hands behind his head and gave a foxy grin. As long as you aren't evil, I don't have a reason to. Rias didn't know why, but the way he said this made her want to believe him. After a second she sighed and nodded. Fine. We will trust you for now. Naruto nodded. Well, you guys better get going. Rias nodded as she called out to her peerage, we're leaving everyone. Issei turned to Rias in shock. What about Asia? It was Naruto who spoke up. Issei, she is still part of the fallen angel group. But I promise that no harm will come to her. Issei looked to Naruto and saw the look of determination in those eyes. The look showed that he would make sure that the promise was fulfilled. He looked to Rias as if pleading for some backup but saw a look of sadness. I'm sorry Issei, but as she is affiliated with the fallen angels, I cannot bring her with us. But Rias shook her head, showing that this decision was final. Issei took a deep breath before giving a hard look to Naruto. You better keep her safe. Naruto smiled at Issei as he nodded, of course. Asia moved away from Fried, who had passed out from the blood loss. She smiled at Issei before hugging him. Issei hugged her back. I'll see you again, okay? Asai nodded as she pushed away. Yes, I'm sure we will. Rias smiled at this as her peerage came closer to her and she summoned a magic circle to take them away. Issei gave one last look to Asai and waved, see ya around. Goodbye Issei. And with that, Rias and her peerage disappeared, leaving Naruto, Asia, and Fried in the room. Naruto nodded as he turned to the passed out man, right. Time to finish up here. Ino. Ino appeared next to Naruto in her ninja attire. She had on a black sleeveless mock top and had the part over the top of her and collarbone removed to make it look like she had a strapped tube top. Over it, she wore an open sleeveless purple jacket that stopped under her with her midriff being shown off. A purple waist cape that was over an onyx skirt with a slit that showed off more of her thigh on her left side, and under the skirt was black biker shorts that were missing the left leg. She had black shinobi boots that had armored leather greaves similar to the bracers she had on. Though the right bracer was thicker with a Senbon launcher in it using an outfit from Fox Guardian. Image of it on my DeviantArt page. Head to profile for link to it. Ino went through hand signs before entering Fried's mind. After a few seconds, she came back out and shivered, that guy's mind is twisted. Naruto nodded as he felt some of the fallen angels approaching. We better get out of here. They are coming. Ino nodded as she made her way to the exit. She stopped and turned around to smirk at what she saw was about to happen. Asia walked up to Naruto and threw herself at him before kissing him on the lips. Naruto returned the kiss as he cupped her cheek and breathed in deeply through his nose to take in her scent. After a few seconds, they separated and Naruto smiled at her. Better get into position. Asia nodded before walking away and laying on the ground and closing her eyes as if she was knocked out. Naruto smirked at the sight as he spoke, see you soon.